Hey, this is Alison Meredith with Holston and Garner IT. Did you know that your kids or teenagers, if they are doing any kind of online communication or digital chatting, they have probably already seen sexually explicit content, or they've probably already experienced cyberbullying, and you might not know a thing about it. So today, I'm asking, what do we need to know as parents? How can we help our kids? How do we even figure out that they might be drowning in the deep end when we didn't even know they were swimming? I've got with me today Abby Bullen. Hello, Abby.
Hey.
Hey, so Abby's kind of invisible. She's monitoring the chat. Please throw your questions into the chat or type them into Facebook Live if you are participating in that way. I've also got with me my son, Peter Meredith, who is a digital native. Peter, would you like to say hello and say anything else?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm here as the other generation, just to give my perspective on some of these things we'll talk about today.
All right, wonderful. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to talk through some things together. So grab a sandwich, and we're just really glad you're here with us. All right, as I said from the beginning, your teenagers, your kids, they have access to so much more sexually explicit and bullying content than we ever had when we were their age. And the reality, guys, is that this stuff is being thrown at them. Even if they're good kids, you know, they're really trying to do the right thing. When I was a teenager, if I wanted to view pornography, I had to find the back alley. If I wanted to learn about drugs, I had to meet a sketchy group of people at the mall, and I had to lie to my mom about getting to the mall, right? It is way easier for this new young generation to get things that they don't need to be getting. And watch out, because their innocent ignorance and their misplaced friendliness is what can shoot them in the foot. So we're going to talk about if your kids are getting this content that you don't even know about, what do you do? I'm going to share two very personal stories that happened to both Peter and another of my sons. I'm going to call him Paul. He shall remain anonymous, or what's the right name when you, pseudonym, right? Pseudonym Paul. And then another son whom I'll call John. So the first story is about Peter and Paul, who received very sexually explicit texts with a group of teenagers. And the second is about a Discord chat that I discovered my son John participating in. So let me just pause and kind of tell you how this story starts. I received, and this is going back way over a year ago, I received a phone call from a parent that said, "Hey, have you checked Peter and Paul's phones recently?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, you really need to check that out. There's some stuff on there that so-and-so posted, and it's really pretty bad." And I immediately was like, "What?" So he mentioned the name of a guy I knew. I said, he's a nice guy. He wouldn't. He said, "Yeah, you need to pick up your kids' phones." So I picked up my kids' phones, and I was shocked. And then when I approached Peter and Paul, I said, "Oh, wow, what's going on here?" And Peter, would you like to share, what did you say when you first saw it?
Sure. Well, it was a chat group with a couple of friends that I knew, and I honestly, it was tons of chat. People were chatting. I was just fed up with it, so I just muted it. Honestly, I had never even looked at it, and I could have looked at it. It was right there, but I honestly didn't pay attention to it. I just had muted it, and I wasn't paying attention.
Right. So the first shocker was I'm coming to him saying, what is this? And he's like, "This is the first time I'm seeing it." And sure enough, I went and Peter showed me in his notifications, he had put it on silent because it was one of those texting groups that was just making his phone blow up.
Yeah.
So the good news was it was the first time Peter saw it. But let me go back to sharing my screen, and I'm going to actually show you what was involved. So we had a meme. This is actually, there was a whole lot of them. I'm just going to show you four. A meme about stalking. Then we had, something about sexually predatory, inappropriate behavior. Inappropriate for teenage boys to be talking about. And then here was the one that really made me suck in my breath, was finding this on Peter and Paul's phone. So, so when I discovered that, what I am thankful to God that I had the wisdom to do was not to immediately go up to Peter Mull and say, "Oh my God, are you kidding me?" This, okay, that's what went through my head. But instead, I called a couple of girlfriends and said, "Oh my God," okay, that's just going to happen, guys. It's shocking. And I'm sharing these specific memes with you because I hope you haven't been through this. But if you haven't been through it, don't assume it's because your kids haven't seen it. You need to be shocked. You need to know this stuff is out there. I didn't know. I didn't know how easy it was and how much it was out there. So, and then I called some friends, and I have some very wise friends who gave me some very wise counsel, including a pediatrician who told me how to have a conversation just to make sure that there had not been any inappropriate sexually predatory behavior. And to be clear, I have no evidence that the person who posted this, who was an adult, by the way, I would like to point out this was an adult posting to a group of teenage boys. So I have no evidence that this adult was doing anything other than forgetting that he was an adult and trying to act like a cool kid in the teenager locker room. I hope that's all it was. But as the saying goes, if it looks like a duck and smells like a duck and quacks like a duck, you call it a duck. That is grooming. That slide that you just saw is grooming behavior. It is getting minors used to seeing sexual content. And that's the same. I don't know if this person was using it for that, but that is what predators do. Their first step is just to get people used to that. Now, Peter is a leader in a youth organization that requires training on this. And so I'd like for Peter, as the young adult in the room, to comment on, I mean, do you agree, Peter? Do you think I'm overreacting, or do you think that is sexually predatory grooming behavior?
Yeah, I don't think you're overreacting. It's hard for me. I wasn't paying attention, but for your kids that are paying attention, they don't know. You can't you can't tell as a kid. You haven't developed enough to be able to make those calls to say, "Oh, okay, this is too far." Because it's just a little bit at a time. It's one of those memes, you're like, "Oh, that's a funny meme that one of your buddies sends you or somebody sends you," and it's a rabbit hole you go down, and you can't get back out. That's just the nature of it. And they can't really make, I don't want to say that they can't make decisions, but it's really, really hard without somebody there, like your parents, to help you understand what is okay and what is not okay for people to talk about online.
Absolutely. You guys, parenting is hard work. It is not a once and done. It is conversation after conversation after conversation. And we'll be talking more about this, but let me remind you that there's two great apps I've personally used. One is called Bark. The other is called Safe Lagoon. And Abby, do you want to put a link to those in the chat? Or, I talked about those a couple weeks ago, right? Maybe just link that webinar that I did.
Yeah,
but that'll be
like it was in webinar 2, and I'll put the links in the chat additionally.
Right. And even in that webinar, I just briefly went over them, but I also linked to a YouTube channel that has some great advice on how to set up Bark or Safe Lagoon. But there is nothing better than over the shoulder. You actually do need to occasionally pick up your kids' devices and just read them. And with that too, let me share, I have a really awesome group of mom friends, as I hope many of you also are blessed with great friends. And I knew most of the kids, teenagers in this chat, and all of us parents just got on the line, talked it up with each other. How do we get through this? And I'm going to share with you something that I included in my white paper. Let me share my screen again. It focuses, I know it's small print, but guys, the point is you just need to make your kids look at it and think about it. So the mom just says, look at this. Think about this. Would I ever post something like this? Would your dad ever post something like this? Do you know anybody at our church or like the people you respect that would post this? And then the final kicker is, help me understand why this is wrong. You tell me, why is it wrong to post stuff like this? And Peter, you were it was you and Paul that I sat down one at a time and went through this conversation. Tell me if you think that was helpful to you.
I think it is very helpful because this is probably the best way to approach, because then not only do I realize this is bad, but it is a great way to have two-way communication. Because if you just go after your kid saying this is horrible, you can't do stuff, they might think it's horrible. They might be, oh yeah, well, mom says that's bad, we can't do that. but they don't really understand without some sort of conversation. And this is just a great way to start that. It gets them to think about these types of things.
Exactly. Exactly. So Abby's got a link here in the slideshow to this white paper here that I published that has more of the story. In the white paper, by the way, I did not specifically say it was an adult posting to the kids, but there's a whole section about sexually predatory behavior, and I encourage you to check out that white paper. It's just a great resource. But let's move on, because I know we're trying to keep this brief here during the lunchtime break. So the second example I wanted to give you was my son John discovering he had a Discord chat, which is a chat platform that people often use after playing a game. So he had been playing League of Legends, which we talked about previously. Super fun game that they can play with random people online. And so clearly the game had just ended, and my son John typed, "That was fun." And this random person he's never met in real life said, "Yeah, AF." And so he says, "What's AF?" "As fuck." "Oh, I didn't know that was a thing." "It's a thing." All right, so that was pretty much all I needed to read to have all kinds of red flags go up, but I didn't get up and walk away. I'm sitting there at the computer reading his chat, and I discover there's a number of young ladies that he has swapped pictures with, fully clothed, but just, "Hey, I loved playing that game with you. Where do you live?" "I live in Malaysia." "Oh, that's cool. Send me a picture. Here's a picture of me." Okay, I thought we've been through this, guys. Okay, this is a reminder to me. Once is not enough. They forget. They're teenagers. You might have a really friendly kid in your house who just, I have no reason to think that my son was being malicious or inappropriate. He just enjoyed playing a game with these people, and so they're swapping pictures. And remember, to the digital natives, Peter, it's no big deal to you to chat up with some person you've never met in Malaysia, right? I mean, you don't recommend it, but it's like, for my generation, it's kind of, are you kidding me? But for you, it's more normal for your generation, right?
Well, yeah, it is a little bit normal. The internet connects everybody across the world instantly, so we are much more normalized to connecting to people you've never met before. And because of that, it's much easier for people in my generation and younger to go that other step from just talking about game strategy if you're playing a specific video game, or saying, "Hey, that was fun," or something like that, to exchanging pictures. It is much easier for us to make that jump because we've already taken the first step, which is not inherently bad to be able to connect with people, but all of these negative things come after that. So once we're connected, it's so much easier to take that next step.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what I did for that situation is I went immediately to my husband and showed him screenshots and explained to him, "Here's what I found." And by the way, there were about 5 conversations. I just shared one, but I found about 5 one-on-one conversations between my son John, pseudonym, and random people from all over the world who I had various issues with. And Tim agreed, "Yes, this is very serious." And so I said, "I would like to be a fly on the wall when you talk with John about this." Tim said, "Sure." And so he called John back to his office, and Tim said, "John, don't ever communicate with people that you don't know in real life, unless it's an in-game chat where you're playing League of Legends, and the 5 of you on the team are talking about playing League of Legends. When the game is over, stop chatting with them. Don't invite them to be your friend." And John said, "Okay." And he walked out. And I said to my husband, "Are you kidding me? Is that it?" And Tim said, "Yeah, that'll do." So, and that will do, because of the relationship that Tim and John already have in place, and the relationship that John and I already have in place. Which, listen, I'm not setting myself up as a model mom. I got teenage kids. We do not always get along. I am still figuring this out. But they know that I love them. And when I tell them something serious, and when my husband Tim told John that something serious, he knows, his dad knows how to figure out if he's obeying on that. So, again, this is a brief lunchtime gathering. There's a universe of things we could discuss, but let me kind of officially end for here, but Peter and I will stay on the line if there's any further questions. And then we hope you'll join us tomorrow, same time, same station. We're going to be interviewing the author of this book, and she's going to be specifically talking about sexting. If you don't know what sexting is, you need to know what sexting is. And Lisa will be talking with us about that. But Abby, do we have any questions?
Yeah, here's one. So someone's wondering if you got any pushback from your sons when you tried to have those conversations with them.
I did not. And I am grateful to tell you that. I have gotten pushback from my sons over the years on many issues. So perhaps a better, fuller answer to that question is, how do I handle when they do give pushback? But I don't know. I don't know that I can get into that on a brief webinar. Parenting is complicated. But next week, one of our guests is going to be Ruth Grunstra, who's a parenting coach. And I will say that in general, here's a good in general quick thing I can say. When you discover your teenagers are having inappropriate chats, the solution is probably not to take their phone and say, forget it, you just can't do it anymore. That's probably not the solution. Peter, do you want to respond about why you agree or disagree with me on why that's not the solution?
Yeah, I would say that that's always the inherent reaction, and that's not a bad reaction, but it's not a good solution, because ultimately the kid will feel as though you don't understand, because to them that's kind of like a one-off bad example, and the way you approach it makes it feel like you're just trying to control their life. You're trying to take over. You're not letting them do anything fun. Is how a lot of times kids will feel. Heard one mom say that she came in and she heard her son was on a voice chat and the kids were saying bad things. So she just unplugged his computer and sent him to his room in the middle of the game. And I'll tell you, that kid does not think that his mom cares about his video games. And you don't have to care about the video games your kids play, but you do care about your kids. And they enjoy playing those video games or doing whatever it is they do online. You just have to be there to help them understand what is appropriate and what is not. And just taking everything away is not a great response.
Right. And so again, look at the link Abby put to this white paper, because one of the things I talk about there is we got to ask the right questions. So when you discover and you know you need to give them some guidance, like I had to with Peter and Paul and John, and you do get pushback, okay, don't quit, but don't necessarily push back on their pushback, because you're in this for the long game. Here's what I want you to think of as parents. You are in this for the long game, okay? So what is the worst that happens if you just say, like, and you're thinking in your head, he just gave me pushback, I'm losing, okay? Sometimes as a mom, when I'm losing, I don't like it, but I walk away. And my kid feels like he won, but it's because I know if I push back, I'm going to keep losing. As the saying is, when you're digging a hole, stop digging. When you realize you're digging a hole, stop digging. And then you call up somebody like Ruth Grunster, who's a parenting coach, or you call up your pediatrician, or you ask a friend at church who has well-behaved kids. I mean, you have to figure this out, and your personality and your teenager's personality are unique. I cannot give you a one-size-fits-all. But to Peter's point, of course you don't care about the stupid video games, and you wish your kid didn't, right? But if you just pull the plug, you have just unnecessarily created a huge wall, and you have made it more difficult to win the long game. So that's my big idea of what if your kid gives you pushback, is immediately think about the long game. You think, okay, the good news is I didn't know I had a problem. Guess what? The problem was there yesterday, last week, but now you know. So you're already ahead of where you were yesterday. That's a long answer. Abby, did that help? What else do we have?
No, I think that's good. Quick question from Mike. It sounds like he missed a few minutes. He's wondering if Bark is a good site or a bad site.
BARK is a good site. Bark is one of the parental monitoring apps, which we're happy to recommend. And it's an app you put on your kids' devices. You need to involve your kids when you do this, because it's going to involve entering things like their GroupMe password if they have a GroupMe app for chatting. So it's not something you can kind of do in the dark. But I hope you have a good enough relationship with your kid, and you can have a conversation with them about that. Ask your kid, what kind of boundaries do you think I should set? And with Bark or Safe Lagoon, you can do things like setting a limit of how many minutes or hours per day on certain apps. And then you'll get a copy of any suspicious messages. Now, I am sorry to report Safe Lagoon, as of yesterday, I asked, they cannot monitor Discord, which is where I discovered my son John having that conversation. Bark says they can monitor Discord, but it's a little clunky and different than the way they monitor other things. And so the big takeaway from all that is, yes, you need a tool. You need Bark, you need Safe Lagoon, there's other good options. Pick one or more, but you also just need to be over the shoulder. But that was a longer answer, but I do recommend Bark. In particular, Bark has done some amazing work on catching sexual predators, by the way, side note, because yeah, enough about that. What other questions do I have?
Looks like that's it.
All right. So, so great. Well, listen, we are just delighted to be here with you. There's just so much more we could say. Let me just at least close by mentioning there's a little document called Know Your APCs, which I have printed and hanging next to my desk. I asked Abby to put that in the chat. It's a wonderful resource. It talks about access, privacy, and control. Those are the three things that sexual predators look like. I mean, they want access, privacy, and control. So with that, the first story I shared, there was an adult messaging a group of teenage boys that became some private 101s that were inappropriate. At least one of them I know was inappropriate. Whenever any adult is private messaging a teenager or child, you got to be included. Let me just wrap up with that. Anytime, even if it's accidental, if there's a teacher or a coach that is private messaging your kids on email or texting or whatever, your family policy needs to be copy mom, copy dad, period. End of story. And it's nothing personal. It's not like I don't trust you, Mr. Smith or whoever. It's just our policy. And any professional parent or coach who's worth his salt will know why you're asking. That's just policy. And it actually protects the teacher as much as it protects you. So it's very good to have that policy. So there's your bonus policy. But anyway, join us tomorrow, 12 o'clock. And, you know, our regular time is 12 to 12:15. I know we went a little long today. We will probably definitely go long tomorrow. We'll try to get through the meat of what Lisa wants to share with us by 12:15. But she has agreed to stay on for Q&A up through 12:30. So expect that tomorrow. And we'll hope to see you then. Thank you.